So today we will be talking about the main challenge of soils, causes, and how to avoid them. The purpose of today is that you as farmer or as gardener can identify the main challenge, and I will be suggesting some solutions, some action to take, but however, this Thursday I will be discussing them more in details. Okay. As a spoiler alert for today, the takeaway for today will be like you better pay attention at the first sign. So that's the takeaway for today. Um, the topics that we will be discussing will be loss of organic matter, urbanization, soil compaction and crust, erosion, soil nutrient imbalance, salinization, soil acidity, soil pollution, and loss of soil biodiversity. As an overview of what we'll be discussing in the next webinar, we will be discussing the following topics: difference between restoration, regeneration, and resilience. Also, we will be talking about conservation tillage, the different conservation tillage that you can use in your farm. What is contour farming and how to do it, the sediment trapped to avoid erosion, crop rotation techniques, cover crops, soil amendment like compost, manure, and liming. And the last topic will be nutrient cycle. We will be discussing how to incorporate crop residues in your management practice. I always like to start a presentation with a quote. And today I am sharing with you this quote from Vandana Shiva, an environmental activist, and say, rebuilding soil fertility is the very foundation of sustainable food production and food security. There is no alternative to fertile soil to sustain life, including human life. No matter how many sons you have on your iPad, cars in your marquee, or book on your shelf, is the ability of plant to capture solar energy that is the root of it all. So without fertile land, what is life? So with this quote, this is important to recognize the values of soil because we need healthy soil for healthy life. So no matter what you have in your house, healthy soils is the key for life. Okay, I will share some questions along the presentation because I want to make this presentation, this webinar more dynamic. So let's go digging with the first question. Is the decomposition of organic matter good? What do you think? You can share in the comment if you want, or just think about that because we will be answering and discussing this question in the next slide. I don't know if someone is writing in the chat or not.
Yes, we do have an answer so far. Someone said yes.
Yes. You are right. Okay. Okay. Organic matter plays a vital role in many of the soil functions. Let's say this, organic matter is the panacea from main problems in soil because organic matter influence in the chemical, physical, and biological properties. So that's why many farmers say that compost is the panacea because it's the organic matter, the panacea. So why? Because provide nutrients that plant need to grow, increase the ability to retain water. This is amazing because organic matter can hold 20 times its weight in water. So you can imagine how amount of water can hold organic matter. Also promote physical stability because organic matter enhance aggregate stability, and also improve water infiltration. So it's like magic because organic matter holds water, but at the same time, enhance water infiltration. So you will have enough water for plant, but not too much. But how loss of organic matter occurs? This is from the mineralization. This fancy word is just the transformation of compounds. When you lose organic matter, this can be the first step to develop a chain of problems in your farm, because losing organic matter will mean that you are losing nutrients. And also you are losing the capacity of soils holding nutrients. So it's not only the nutrients that are already in the organic matter, it's that organic matter also have the capacity to hold another nutrient. It's like a sponge. We call that buffer effect. So if you use amendment or fertilizer in a soil that is already depleted in organic matter, that soil will not have enough capacity to hold that nutrient. So you will be losing money if you want to see in that way. So that's why organic matter is key in our soils. Also, losing organic matter will promote physical degradation, because the soil particles are attached each other, because organic matter act like a glue that stick together particles. So if you don't have organic matter in the soil, those particles will not be attached each other and are more susceptible to erosion. Talking more about this panacea, organic matter is formed by the decomposition of organic compounds and by the biological activity of the organisms in the soil. Humus is the result of the decomposition. And this is mainly composed of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, and other elements that are used by plants. The increase of organic matter is also proportional to the cation exchange capacity. And what is that? This is the ability of soils to retain nutrients in cation forms, because most of the nutrients that plant needs are in cation forms, such as calcium, magnesium, potassium. So increasing organic matter will increase the capacity to hold those cations. Also, soil humus is divided into main groups. This is non-humic substance like carbohydrate, proteins, and lignin. Those compounds are more stable in the soil, are more hard to decompose. However, humic substance, that is the other group, had more nutrients. Those are the substance that usually people sells for farmers, like use fulvic acid like fertilizer, humic acid like fertilizer, because they are very concentrated in nutrients. The difference between those groups, fulvic acid, humic acid, and humines, is the solubility, because they can be soluble in water, the fulvic acid. So when you see like a river with yellow color, maybe it's because fulvic acid are in those water, but humic acid are not so soluble like fulvic acid. So fulvic acid are more susceptible to be lost when rainfall event. Yeah, let me see. So organic matter provide nutrients and promote the nutrient cycle according the origin of the materials that are made the organic matter. Also, the quality will be the nutrients that apport to the soil. Also, organic matter is the food for microorganisms. So they use organic matter and they help to oh my god, I forgot in English. They make the nutrients available to plants. So it's good if you have organic matter, you will be having food for those microorganisms. So will be better for your soil and your soil will be healthy. Okay. How loss of organic matter can occur? By microbial activity, of course, because it's their food. Loss of topsoil. This is very important because if you lost the topsoil, the few centimeters in the surface, you will be losing the more active soil. Also, with vegetation loss, you will be letting this soil naked and exposed to erosion. So you will be losing organic matter because those are the smallest particle in the soil and are more susceptible to erosion. And how you can measure soil carbon? You can use label organic carbon label because this is the most fresh carbon in the soil. And this will let you know the short-term effect of your management. Total organic matter is like the pool of carbon that you have on your soil. Also, you can use soil respiration like a proxy to know how is the organic matter in your soil, but also to know how is the microbial activity, because this is a measure that you use to know how active is your soil. So this figure let you know how you can lose carbon. You can lose by erosion, removing the harvest, removing the plant after harvest, and also when carbon is transformed to carbon dioxide. Okay. So organic matter, this was the question that I make later. We have been talking about loss of organic matter. However, organic matter needs to decompose to release nutrients. So that's good. The problem is in the proportion, because if you are extracting and never adding compost or manure or letting compost or crop residues, you just are extracting and you are breaking that cycle. That's the problem when you do that. So the problem is not that organic matter decompose. The problem is when you only extract and never adding amendment. Okay, so loss of organic matter can be natural, but also can be caused by human activities. Natural factor, we call them inherent, like climate, texture, and natural vegetation. Climate, we will talk about temperature, moisture, or solar radiation. Because if you have a lot of precipitation and high temperature, you will be increasing the rate of the reaction of microorganisms, so the decomposing rate will be higher. So you will be losing that organic matter fast than in other climate. And texture, it's because when you have loamy soils are those that dominate sand and silt and not clay. If you have loamy and sandy soils, those particles don't attach each other as clay particles do. So when you have a clay soil, the particles will be like protecting organic matter each others, but in sand, that doesn't happen. So when you have a sandy soil, you need to take more attention to organic matter. Anthropic factors like bare ground, if you let the soil naked, well, organic matter will be propense to be washed away in raining events. Also, if you do excess tillage, if you over-tilling your soil, you will be breaking the macro aggregates in micro aggregates. That's like the architecture of the soil. So you will be breaking down the soil in the smallest pieces, and that will be exposed to organic matter that is protected. So you will be losing your organic matter if you over-tilling your soil. Also, the incorrect fertilization, because fertilization rates increase the decomposition. So if you over fertilize your soils, you will be accelerating this rate of decomposition. So that's why you need to take care about when, where, and why you fertilize if you want to fertilize. So so it's the speed of the composition of organic matter determined by the three major factors. Those are soil organisms, the physical environment, and the quality of the organic matter. How to avoid that? We will be talking this in the next webinar, but I want to mention them because you will see that some solutions, some practice you can do for many problems. So the solution of 2 or 3 problems can be the same. To avoid losing organic matter, it's widely recommended practice conservation tillage or no tillage, soil cover, it can be leaf or dead, reducing erosion using sediment traps, contour farming. In addition, it's recommended crop rotation, incorporating crop residues, and also using manure and compost to add more organic matter to your soil. Okay, so this is a diagram that describes all that we have been talking about. The key is the management. So you need to take good management in your farm, in your soil. You need to have good amount of organic matter in your soil, to have soil organisms, to have better soil structure, to have a healthy soil, and also this will mean air quality, water quality, so all is connected, and all start with the management, so that's key. Okay, this is another question to see if you are awake. Let's go deep. If a soil with a high agricultural potential due to its natural fertility has been urbanized and covered with concrete, it is considered that this soil is. What do you think after doing that? What do you think about that soil?
So if anyone wants to share their thoughts, you can share them either by the chat or through the question and answer. Someone answered dead.
That, yeah, that's true.
4. Another good one.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
So we
Soil.
have dead and we have 4.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Another answer.
I think that's it. 4 and dead. I think those two are pretty spot on. What do you think?
Yeah, those are good answers. Okay, thank you. Okay. Soil sealing is the most intense form of land take. This is when soil is permanently covered. The soil surface is covered with something that is waterproof material. This is considered a non-reversible loss. So after that, yeah, soil is dead. You cannot reverse that. This is a diagram that the Food and Agriculture Organization make, explaining how is the soil sealing around the world. As you can see, it's regular, but the concerning about this is that it's increasing. Soils that are soil sealed, that are impacted by urbanization, are increasing. So we need to take care of how we plan our cities, and we need to take into consideration the soil type before doing a construction. Okay. This is another diagram of how looks natural soils in contrast of a soils that has been impacted. Farm grain soils cannot be treated as soils for construction. This will destroy them. As you can see here, they remove the topsoil. The topsoil is the key for agriculture. So if you remove the topsoil, game over. So no. So we need to evaluate what type of soil I have before impacting them with constructions. At the hand of soil sealing comes urbanization. For example, this is a wind farm that was developed like 6 years ago, if I remember well. Something that we could think that should be harmonious with soil conservation and management, a wind farm, right? But they developed it in a farm grade land. So they use the most fertile soils in the south of our island that are vertisols and soils to make this one wind farm. So has been positive, the wind farm? Well, this is another topic to discuss, but the impact was already done and this is not reversible. So what is important here is that planning and development need to take into consideration what type of soil are impacting. So when you make the plan for your farm, please take into consideration the different soil type that you have. That's the takeaway from this. Another challenge that soils can have is soil compaction. This is the most common challenge in farms because when people use equipment promote soil compaction. Soil compaction is defined like the modification in the volume of the soil, and it occurs when soil particles press against each other. So the pore space is reduced. This change the physical structure. Just think about, uh, I don't know, like this glass, you have the pore space, but if you break it down, will not be back at the same was before. So yeah, something like that. And this make a reduction of the macropores. The macropores are the space where the water can infiltrate through the soil. So this will change the water movement through the profile, through the soil profile. So we need to take care about that. When soil are compacted, the bulk density increase. That is defined like mass per volume. So you will have more mass, more soil in the same volume. So you will not have pore space. I don't know if I have, let me see, like, oh, I don't have that. Ah, it's here. Okay. This is a graphic that explain how soils are formed. You have like 50% that is solid space, but also you have the half that is porous space. This is a perfect soil, but almost all soils have solid and porous space. That porous space have water and air. Both are needed for plants. So when you compact your soil, you are increasing the solid part and you are letting less air and water. So yeah. Here in this table, I want to explain you that the critical bulk density will depend of the soil texture. So if you have clay soils will have one bulk density, and if you have loamy soils will have another. So that's why you always need to take into consideration what type of soil you have before taking measures like, oh, this is a receipt for everyone, this should work for me. No, you need to know what soil you have on your farm. So soil compaction is the change in soil architecture, like I said before. Without proper soil structure, water flow is concentrating in the macropores. Those where the big lines are the macropores, but you need also micropores. Those tiny pores are where water is available for plants. So if all the water go through the macropores, you will not be getting enough water for your plants. So maybe you are using water to your plants, but the structure is not helping that this water that you are using can go to the roots. So that's why you need a good structure. Okay, in these two diagrams, I am explaining the difference between the ideal soil and the compacted one. This one is the ideal soil. The peach shapes are the solid part of the soil, and the blue lines is the water, and then the white is the air. So you can see that there is enough space for air and for water, but then when it's compacted, all the particles are together, so you doesn't have air. And airspace is necessary for plants because they exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide between the roots. So this is very important that you have air space so you doesn't have anaerobic conditions. And in the right side, you have two diagrams. This one is the water movement when soils are not compacted. You can see that water go through the soil profile, and then when it's compacted, the water cannot go through the profile. So this is a big problem. When you see on your farm that are like ponds, this is a good indicator, well, bad indicator, but you can know that something is happening there because water is not infiltrating as supposed to be. So you can guess, oh, my soil is getting compacted in this area, so I need to take action in this area. So yeah, you need to pay attention to the signs. Okay. This is a flow soil. This is when soil is compacted. How look, you can see here that there is a difference in the color, and you can see here like it's more porous, but here is like all pressed together. So that happens when you are using equipment frequently in the same direction. So you are promoting that your soil get compacted. Also, if you use equipment when the soil is wet, with wet soil, you will be increasing the pressure on soil. If you can see here in this diagram, you see the same wheel, but here it's dry, hard dry, the soil. Here the soil conditions are moist and here are wet. So you can see that the pressure is more deep here. So this happens when you are using your equipment in ground condition. That's why we always say don't use your equipment if the field is wet. This is not from 1 year to other. Maybe the flow soil will develop along 5 years. So you need to take action today because if you are doing using equipment with ground condition, maybe this year you will not see effects on your yields, but maybe in 3-4 years you will be having problems. And here, this is a picture of how a plant develop in a normal soil, but here is compacted. So as you can see, the roots are not growing well because they need to take more energy to pass through that soil that is very compacted because there is not porous space that helps that root grow easily. So that's why you can see in farms that some trees are like shrubs when supposed to be like trees because roots cannot develop well, so the trees are smallest. Okay. Ahora. Okay, as I was talking, the use of heavy equipment. You can use equipment if you want to do your tillage with equipment. The thing is that you use them when soil is not wet. You don't want use them when soil is too dry because it will be hard, right? Tilling the soil. But if you use when it's too wet, you will be compacting the inner layers of the soil. I always like to discuss this using the bulldozer to clean the farm because some people think that, oh, I buy a land, I buy a farm, let me clean the farm with a bulldozer, let me have these planes, and they want all, I don't know, perfect, like clean. And if you do this, if you use a bulldozer, you will be impacting your soil. You will be impacting the topsoil. So this will be a destruction. If you were planning to use that soil as farm soils, you will be having problems because you already destroyed that soil. Of course, you can use a bulldozer if you are planning to build a house or make roads, but not to prepare the land to farm, not to prepare your farm to start growing crops. When you pass the bulldozer above the soil, this soil is considered destroyed, dead, as someone says before, because all the physical structure has been destroyed. And also, if you remove the topsoil, you will be losing the life in the soil that it's in the inner layers. So yeah. Also, if you have equipment, you need to consider what type of wheel you will use, because if you use one that is wider, you will be distributing the weight, so you will be impacting less the soil. So that's another consideration to take, the type of wheel. So after watching this horrible scene, I always like to share how many years take to form soil. It takes 2,000 years only to form 10 centimeters of soil. So you can imagine how many years pass to form this soil profile. So yeah, we need to take care of our soils. This is something that's formed over years, and you can destroy them just in a day using a bulldozer. Okay, oh, sorry for doing that. How to avoid soil compaction? You can use organic matter, because this helps to the particle flocculation. This is that particles stick together each other, so you will be helping to create those pores that are needed for air, for water. So yeah, use organic matter. Planting grasses with deep root, like this one. This is a daikon beet. It's widely known as the biotillage, because you are doing tillage with plants. Use machinery only under certain condition. As I say, don't use them with wet condition. And also, if you will use cars in your farm, please do a road planification. Don't pass your car along all the farm. Just planify what will be the place for roads, where will be the trucks, where will be the house, or just do a planification. Okay, this is a graphic. I don't know why I don't see. This is a graphic that shows that compacted soil will vary among the depth. So yeah, along you are going more deep in the soil, soil will be with less pore space, because sometimes pore space is created by plants, and plants grow mainly in the surface. The roots are more in the surface. Okay. So doing another question. Let's go digging. How does hydric erosion start? Are you there?
So anyone that would like to have a comment and share it via the chat. The chat is open and active, so whoever would like to share. So how does hydric erosion start? I'm guessing it has to do with water, but I don't want to expose soils. We have someone that talked about having exposed soils. Anyone else want to take a quick guess? Let's see, I think we have another one that says plant removal. It's a good
Yes.
one too.
Also, yeah, I like.
With heavy rainfalls on uncovered soils, flooding as well. Those are great,
Yes.
great answers, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
When topsoil is removed or altered. Boom. I love them. These guys know what they're talking about. We got a good
Yeah.
crew here. Zoelie, what do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah. This is a very good group. Thank you. Um, okay. All the answers were correct. So yeah, definitely. We will be talking more in the next slides. Yeah. Uh, okay. Erosion is the transformation of the soil into the sediments. So soil are detached, the particles are detached and turned into the sediments. Uh, there are two main classifications for soil erosion. The geological erosion, that is a natural process, because erosion is part of the equation of soil formation process. So erosion is not bad. The problem is when it's accelerated by human activities. So that's always the problem. Human activities that doesn't go with the nature. So the other classification is anthropic erosion caused by human disturbance. So erosion is always happening, it's a constant process. The thing that you can do to protect your soil is reduce the amount of erosion with your practice. Some of them that you already mentioned. Um, what is the threat with erosion? That you will be losing the topsoil, so you will be losing nutrients. The soil decrease in depth. Sometimes I see farms that supposed to have like a soil profile like 4 feet of depth, and they only have 2 depth because erosion take many years. But when you see the results, it's like, oh my god, I lost all that soil already. So yeah, decreased soil depth. Also accumulation of sediments in lakes, rivers, reservoirs. This this happen when particles are like carried by water, right? And then accumulate in the river. So you are losing space in that reservoir and that river. So this is a huge problem. We have that problem here in Puerto Rico. Also, when clays particles that are the smallest one that move along with the water, clay particles usually have phosphorus attached because phosphorus like to bond to clay, and then you will be moving, well, you know, water will be moving clay particles and also will be moving nutrients. And that's why you see some rivers or lakes that have bloom of algae, because there is a lot of nutrients that go with the sediments and feed those algae. So this creates another problem that is known as eutrophication, and that creates another problem that is uh, reduce the amount of oxygen available in that water. So everything is connected, from the erosion, that clay particles that go with the nutrients and cause another problems. Less water in aquifers, yeah, because all those sediments that end in the aquifers are displacing water, taking the space to store water. And yeah, we have that problem in Puerto Rico, as I said before. Also, the threat is that you can get floodings and landslide when erosion comes, because erosion could create like areas more susceptible to landslide. Like here in this picture, you can see that erosion exposed the parental material here, and this house here are more susceptible to landslide because all that soils uh, is less depth, and also this soil doesn't have topsoil, so some vegetation doesn't grow up here, so doesn't help that particles get attached to each other and protect from other rain events. Oh, this is a picture of clay with phosphate that get attached to each other. Okay, types of erosion. Yeah, this is the main erosion that is with water, the hydric erosion, also the aeolic erosion that is by wind, and the gravity erosion. As you can see in this picture, this is surface runoff. This happens when water from rainy event comes, and then the smallest particles like clay, silt, and organic matter move with the water, but the heaviest one, the sand, remains in the place. So you can see, if you see that in your farm, like you see a lot of sandy particles, like moving when the water was moving there, you are having surface runoff. So you are losing particles of your soil. Okay, the causes could be meaning because you are removing and breaking the structure of soil. Wildfires because you leave the soil on the land naked, so bare soil is more susceptible to erosion. The infrastructure, urbanization, as I said before. In addition, agriculture. That's why we need to take better practice to reduce the erosion in our farms. I will be explaining that later. Okay, talking more about hydric erosion, there are many types. So you can see in this figure, the first one is a splash erosion. This is caused by drops. Then the sheet erosion, rill erosion, gold erosion, and stream bank erosion. I will be explaining all of them. How hydric erosion start? All start with a drop of water. As you can see here, comes the rainfall. Oh, sorry, that's my dog. The rainfall fall into the soil, and the soil is naked. And then the detachment of the particles of soil get the particles right, like dispersed, and those particles are susceptible to move with the water, and the transportation of those particles occur. And we know that as translocation, that you are moving sediments from one place to another, and then those particles are deposited in another place. So yeah, you are like destroying soils from one place and then getting all that material to another place. Okay. This is an example of the force that have each drop. Sometimes you can think, oh, it's just like a rain, doesn't matter, but each drop have a lot of force to detach particles. As you can see here, this is a drop of rainfall that detach particles in the soil, and this is the first step of erosion and destroy the soil structure. So the impact of water droplets could make soil particles detach and reach a height of 3 feet high, and also move to a distance of 5 feet. So can you imagine the force that have only one drop? And if you have a lot of rainfall, this will help that all those particles get detached and are more susceptible to erosion. Okay. This is an example of hydric erosion, laminar erosion that I explained before. This is the most common erosion because all the surface is like washed away. An uniform layer is removed and leave sand particles. The other hydric erosion is the strands, furrows or ditches. This occurs when water gets concentrated in the smallest currents, creating like channels in your farm. So if you see that, this is an example that erosion is getting more problematic in your farm. Those channels can be of depth like 2 to 3 inches. It's quite similar to laminate erosion, but when you have these channels, remove soil from the sides, as you can see here in this picture. Another erosion by water is the gully, but in contrast of this one, gully erosion creates deeper channels. We are talking here about 10 inches or more. And this will create that water always move through those channels. So we'll be creating a big problem every time that you have a rain in your farm. The shape of the channel will be different if you have sandy soils or if you have clay soils. If you have sandy soils, we'll have like a U-shaped form, but if you have clay soils, will be like more like a V. So will depend if you have clay or sandy soils. This is a picture of a coffee farm without contouring. Just for example, as you can see here, the gully, all this channel, very depth, all that soil was loose from here, so you will never get that soil back. And you can avoid that using contour farming, and also I will discuss later how you can avoid this. I am. Okay. So not every soil has the same susceptibility to erosion. Soils have a natural level of tolerance to erosion, and we use the Rossler equation to measure laminar erosion or group, and these have some factors in consideration. The first one is erosivity. This is used to describe the potential of a raindrop impact to create runoff. So if you use water in an irrigation system and that erosion, that irrigation system create like a water channel. So this is how you measure that factor. The other one is erodibility, and this is the susceptibility of the soil, the natural susceptibility of that farm. Also, another one is a slope. As you can imagine, if you have a soil with a higher slope, will be more susceptible to erosion than those that are uh, flat. However, flat soils are also susceptible to erosion. If you have a flat farm, doesn't mean that you have not to worry about erosion, because erosion also happens in flat soils. Also, soil management, cover, and erosion control practice. If you use contour, if you use vetiver or other practice, this equation take that into consideration. Okay, this is another example of erosion. This is uh, the Dust Bowls. This was close to the 1913 in United States, and was the product of over-tilling the soil and drought condition. And that resulted in the depletion of soil and wind erosion. That was a serious problem for agriculture and also for health. So how to avoid erosion? As I said before, conservation tillage, using uh, vegetative, uh, vegetative barriers, contour farming, and also using drainage protection. Because if you have like channels, because you want to conduct water on one side of the farm, you need to protect those channels that doesn't increase in the wide. So you need to protect them. Always recommend like using grasses on or some plants to protect that areas. And here, this is a graphic, sorry, that is in Spanish. I am showing you that if you have your soil already covered, if you have higher coverage area, you will be less susceptible to lost soil. But if you have your soil naked, you will be more susceptible to lost soil. Okay, we finished with erosion, and now we are going to discuss another challenge of soils. This is salinization. So let's go digging. And I will want to ask you, salinization in soils can be caused by, what do you think that causes salinization in soils?
So again, anyone that would like to share their thoughts or what they think might cause salinization in soils, please share them via the chat or the question and answer so we can breed them up. I know we have a couple of our partner grantees in the Bahamas, and I know they recently suffered through some salinization of soils. So if anyone would like to share their experience, either through the chat, we have already an answer up that says chemical fertilizers.
Yes, that's one of the reasons.
Yeah, that's another one. Flooding or seawater.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that this group.
Yeah, and I know for a fact that that's definitely something that we saw here in Puerto Rico after Maria and the coastlines, and also in the Bahamas, they saw it after Dorian. So I think there's a lot of people with the direct experience on that specifically. So we have chemical fertilizers, irrigation water, some salts are dissolved in it. That's another one of the answers that someone just shared. Thank you everybody for sharing your answers. By irrigation, that's another one.
Yes, that's right. Okay, perfect. Well, salinization are those soils that contain an excess of soluble salts. This is different from solidification because soils that suffer solidification are those with high sodium content. But salinization means that those soils contain potassium, magnesium, calcium, chloride, sulfate, carbon, and bicarbonate. So that's the difference between them. Those soils all tend to have a pH above 7 and are common in arid and semi-arid zones, such the south areas in the north hemisphere, but doesn't exclude humid sun. This can happen also in humid zones. Here is a map of the Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic, and there is an area that is very higher in soils that have higher concentration of salts. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, about 20% of the world's irrigated soil have problems that induce salinity problems. So that's a big problem, and we will be having this problem in the future. So we need to take action today. So salinization can be from natural causes too, not only human activity. For example, soils that are in areas with less precipitation than evapotranspiration, where the parental material is richer in salts, like magnesium and calcium. All those soluble salts will remain in the soil because the precipitation will not be enough to help to move all those salts through the soil profile. So all those salts that come from the parental material will remain in the soil. As you can see in this picture, this is a picture where soils are richer in salts and the salts come to the surface when the water evaporates. So this is an indicator that you have soluble salts in your soil. This can happen when you have the irrigation system. If you see that the salts are only where the water from the irrigation system falls, this is an indicator that the problem is the water that you are using to irrigate your crops, because the water will be like adding soluble salt to the soil. I will be discussing that when I discuss the anthropic causes of salinization. I was just okay. Talking more about natural causes of salinization, soils with low topography near coastline, as says Pamela, are more susceptible to get more salt from the seawater. This happens when the sea level rise, but also happen with high wind events, like an example of Maria and Dorian, and also in South Carolina, they have a problem when Hurricane Hugo came, because wind carries salts from ocean and was affecting the agriculture fields. fields. Yeah. In addition, salinization can be induced by human activities. How? Well, replacing the natural vegetation, because some plants have the capacity to take salt in their tissues, in their biomass, or those plants had adaptation for salt exclusion like mangrove. So if you remove that plant that already are adapted to that condition, you will be letting the oh my God, all those salts in the soil. And in addition, water irrigation system, because if you use water without treatment, water that is hard, that is richer in carbonate or magnesium and other salts, and you don't treat that water, you will be um, adding salt to your soil. So that's a huge problem, and this happens a lot. So if you use hard water in your irrigation system, you will see like coatings formed in the plants. If you use like a sprinkle irrigation system, you will see that the leaf have like white coatings. This is an indicator that your water is a hard water, so you are adding salt to your soil. Maybe you doesn't have problem this year or in a few years, but salt will be accumulating and you will develop some problem in the future. Other causes is the saltwater intrusion in aquifers. This can happen under natural conditions, yes, but it's mainly driven by human activities. If too much fresh water is pumped from the aquifer system, the salt water can migrate landward by a process that we know like saltwater intrusion. This is what we explain here in this diagram. So if you are taking a lot of fresh water, you can promote that water from seawater enter and then contaminate the freshwater aquifer. In addition, inadequate draining system can be a problem because if soils are not saline before irrigation, or because if uh, the rising water table is getting close to the soil surface, if you doesn't if you doesn't drain your soil, you will be accumulating all those salts in soil. So you need to promote that that water that have soluble salts get away from your soil. So if you doesn't have the drainage system, you will be accumulating that salts. And also, as says Pamela, coastal flooding is a cause of salinization. This is a diagram that summarizes all that I was trying to tell you before, how salinization occurs by natural causes and also how it occurs by human activity. So natural causes can be the parental material, winds, the saline groundwater get in the fresh aquifers. So yeah, and by human can be also, I didn't mention here, but can be also produced by fertilizers. Okay. The left graphic shows how productivity, yields can be affected when you have salinization problems. Sometimes farmers, at least here in Puerto Rico, know that their soils have salinity problems, but they don't see an immediate effect on their yield, so they didn't take action too fast. But this will decrease your harvest along the time. So that's why I always say to people, if you are using irrigation water with hard water, this will create a problem in the future. So it's better that you invest to treat your water now than treat the problem when the soil is already richer in salts. So yeah. Also, soils that are rich in salts will affect the germination process. So you can see the effects on yields, but also you can see the effects if you are sowing direct in the soil. Sowing direct in the soil, yeah. So some recommendation to treat saline soils are this one, but first, this is a very expensive process. So it's better to avoid that, right? If you are using hard water, so it's better to avoid that. So some recommendation is using bio drainage, like reforesting with some plants that are adapted to that condition, because this will promote that you lower the water table. So if the problem is the groundwater, the sea intrusion, you will be letting that down. Also, another recommendation is that you always monitor the water quality, the quality of the water. So this will tell you if you are having problems before it's too late. Also, another recommendation is phytoremediation. For example, you can use legumes that are plants that remove cations, remove salts, and then produce hydrogen ions that will help to lower the pH of the soil. So you will be uh, resolving this problem, not only taking the salts from the soil, but also helping to lower the pH of that soil. Also, use drainage systems, because you will be promoting lixiviation, so you will be moving all that cations through the soil, and you will reduce the amount of that cations. Okay. Another challenge of the soil is the soil acidity. Soil acidity happens when you have the accumulation of hydrogen ions. This lower the pH. So as I said before, but when you go from extreme to another, also you will have problems. And if you have a large amount of hydrogen ions, the pH will be so low that will create a nutrient imbalance, because nutrients availability will depend on the range of pH. That's why we call the pH like the key master variable, because pH uh, will create other condition for other factors. So if you have a pH that is lower than 5, you will create another reaction with aluminum that will promote that your soil gets more acidic. As you see in this figure, you can see that pH go from 4 to 10, and then the availability of nutrients is more when you are between 6 to 7. So that's why people tend to recommend that you have a pH close to 6, because all the nutrients will be more available to plants. So you have soil acidity, but where does all that those hydrogen ions come from? It's a natural acidity, or it comes from another causes? Yes, this can be created by human activities, but also natural acidity happen. For example, we discussed this soil order in the first part, but for reviewing, multi-soils are soils that are highly inventorizado, oh my god, weathered, yeah, are highly weathered, so they are highly lixiviate. So all those cation bays in the soils were moved when precipitation moved, the water moved through the soil profile. This is common in tropical soils, although that soil have a lower pH, have pH problem, can be used for agriculture. The suggestion is that you use like crops that are adapted to that conditions, like coffee, citrus, sugarcane, banana, and also it's widely recommended that you use amendment like compost and lining. Yeah, this is a citrus farm in a multi-soil. When you have acidity problem, you will see that the roots of your plants doesn't develop well, because create like uh, uh, a wider root that doesn't let that nutrients get to the plant. So it's like a tiny root, but wider, más gruesa. Okay. So what factors contribute to lowering the pH of the soil? Um, Carbonic acid that happen when rains fall and uh, has dioxide carbon. So this contribute to soil acidity, but not too much. Also, in soils that have a lot of organic matter, like the histosols that are only formed by organic matter, those soils, when the organic matter decompose, create acid compounds like fulvic acid, humic acid. If you have too much of that compound, you will have lower pH. If you are using peat moss for your germination medium, I always like to tell to people, please use peat moss with compost or with lining, because peat moss is usually with a lower pH. So if you only use peat moss, you can be creating a condition that doesn't is good for the seeds. So please, if you use peat moss, make a mix of peat moss with compost or other things. Some companies already when sell you the pitmos, they make amendment so that some other companies doesn't do anything. So pay attention of what pitmos are you using. Also, the nitrification, using fertilizer with nitrogen promotes the soil acidity, because in order that nitrogen gets available to plants, they release hydrogen that made the soil more um, acidic. Uh, acidical. Uh, Also, when you have your crops that are growing, they use cations in order to grow. So they are removing cations from the soil, and they are getting the soil more acidic, because when they use cation, they exchange that cation, the root, take the potassium from the soil, and then uh, release hydrogen. So yeah, they promote that your soil get more acidic. So you need to uh, add more compost to avoid that your soils get more acidic. And the soluble aluminum that I already explained before. Okay, some recommendations are organic matter, liming, avoid the abuse of nitrogen fertilizer, and also use adapted plant like coffee, banana, plantain. So let's go digging in the last main challenge that have soils. How many nutrients are essential for plants growth?
So again, anyone that would like to share any suggestions to the question, I do have some questions open for you, Zoelie, in
Okay.
regards to soil pH. We have a couple of participants from the Bahamas who mentioned that their soil is quite the opposite. It's actually more, um, what is it, alkaline?
Huh?
That's the opposite.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because
So
maybe are richer in salts.
yes. So I
Yes.
have a question from one of our participants, Lance. He's saying, what about in an area like the Bahamas, where we are limestone rock with just maybe 12 inches of topsoil that is basically ground up limestone, and we have so much calcium in our solid, and we have to lower the pH?
Wow, that's very expensive. Lower if you use some products to lower the pH, those are very expensive, because sometimes they use sulfuric acid. But also, I will not recommend that. I will recommend, before using that product, compost, because like compost have the buffer effect. Not only helps to increase the pH, also helps to reduce the pH. So that could be a solution for that. We have in the north of Puerto Rico soil that is like that. That is like the 8 inch of depth, and then the limestone. But they use with adapted crops like legumes, habichuelas, habichuela, oh my God, legumes, yeah, because those plants like calcium. So yeah, maybe you should consider uh, the type of crop that you are using in that soil.
Thank you for sharing that, Zoelie. Um, so definitely check in later if you have any further questions regarding that, Lance, so we can further discuss about that. So we had a couple people that actually answered the question. Sorry, Zoelie, let me go back to that. So some people have said that they have 8 nutrients and some have said 7. So it's interesting. It's a number around the same area.
Nice. Well, just one before the 7. They need 17 essential elements to grow. Um, those elements are classified in 3 main groups. Uh, the first one are those that can be obtained from the atmosphere, not from soil, like carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, because plants take carbon when they make the photosynthesis. And the other 2 groups are the elements that the plants take from soil, like the macronutrients and the micronutrients. Those are classified according the amount of the nutrient required for adequate plant growth. Macronutrients are needed in more concentration than micronutrients. That's why when uh, you see that are selling fertilizer, they always have like NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, because those are macronutrients that are mostly used by plants. But however, those are macronutrients or micronutrients. Plant needs all of them to grow, and if they didn't have one of them, will reduce yields. So that's important to know what do you have in your soil, uh, to know if you need more potassium. Maybe you will want to use a compost richer in potassium. If you have few phosphorus, you will want to use manure to add phosphorus. So yeah, they need all those elements to grow. Um, so the problem with nutrient imbalance will reflect some symptoms in the plant. There are guides to identify nutrient deficiency symptoms. They can be different among crops. So I always suggest that if you want to use a guide to see if you have problems in nutrients, you use a guide that is for that crop. However, most than using that guide, I always recommend that make a soil analysis to know what is in the soil. The right picture here tells you you better pay attention of the first signs, because those tomatoes are needing calcium. Tomatoes love calcium, and when they doesn't have calcium available, they create this like necrosis at the bottom, and this is a sign that they doesn't have enough calcium to develop. And maybe you have calcium in the soil, but it's not available to plant. This happens when you have a pH too lower, on when you have a pH higher to higher. So this creates the nutrient imbalance. So although you have that element in the soil, it's not available for the plant. So yeah, that's a sign that you should take care. How avoid nutrient imbalance? We will be talking about that in the next webinar about all that recommendation. Use cover crop better if they are nitrogen fixing crops like legumes. Use green fertilizers. Those are plants that have roots that can take nutrients from the depth of the soil and then get above in the biomass. So you are getting all that elements from the soil, from the depth of the soil, more available to the other crop. Also, conservation tillage will help to avoid that you lose the nutrients because some nutrients are lost in the gas form, like nitrogen. Also, the length of the time that you are applying fertilizer and amendment. Sometimes if you apply them too early, then you lose them with a rain event. But if you apply them too late, the crop will not use them when they need it. So this is important. If you will use fertilizer or amendment, knows the stage of the of your crop in order that you can use the fertilizer and amendment in the proper stage. And also soil analysis, because if you doesn't know what is in the soil, you cannot apply fertilizer as Kool-Aid or adjust. Yes. Uh, the other problem, the other challenge that is in soil is soil contamination. Xenobiotic is a fancy word for substance that are foraging to one body, so substance that are foraging to soil. Those contamination can be pesticide because soils can absorb pesticide in clay particles. Um, that doesn't mean that pesticide will be in a way that you can eat them with the plants, right? That doesn't mean that the plant will take the pesticide in the soil. However, there is a gray area because you don't want soils with higher concentration of pesticide. And also, if you use pesticides, you will be killing the life of the soil. So you will be impacting the nutrient cycle. That's why I say here pesticides shouldn't should not be viewed as a panacea. Also, if you have your farm close to a dump site, the lixiviation that comes from that dump site can carry contamination. Also, industrial discharge, petroleum discharge, heavy metals, and mining. I will discuss heavy metals now. No. Okay. This is an example of soil contaminated with cadmium. Cadmium is highly toxic for kidney, so this is a big problem that cacao industry already have because cacao have the capacity to uptake a high amount of cadmium. So they always are doing analysis of the concentration of cadmium in the cacao beans. So you need to know what is in soil before using that soil for crops. Also, for the decontaminating soil, you can use those plants that love that heavy metals. So it's good and also it's bad because if you didn't know that that soil have heavy metals and you eat that crop, you will be eating that heavy metals. But if you know that already that those soils are richer in heavy metals, you can use those crops to take that heavy metals in the biomass and then extract all those contamination elements from the soil. People use surfactants, also bacteria, and the phytoremediation, that is what I already said. Because there are plants that hyperaccumulate toxic elements like kale. This was a news that people were getting serious sick from eating kale because kale and broccoli love some heavy metals. So if you don't know that those heavy metals are on soils, um, the harvest will be richer in that heavy metals. Okay. Oh, yo pensaba que tenía otro slide. Okay, no. So, déjame ver. Yeah. Other problem in soils, other challenge is the biodiversity loss. This create like a change of problems because if you lose biodiversity, you will be losing the good guys that are helping you, not only with nutrient cycle, but also to suppress some pests. So this is something that people doesn't take into consideration, but if you see that you are losing life in soil, that is an indicator that something is bad. How is caused the biodiversity loss? If you doesn't have plants covered, you will not have food for them. Also, if you doesn't have organic matter, you will not have food for them. Also, low humidity soils because they need water too. If you use pesticide, you will reduce the living in your soil. And also, if you over-tilling your soil, you will disrupt those aggregates, so you will be exposing them and doesn't like to them. Okay. The recommendation to avoid losing biodiversity is using compost and manure. If you have soils that are richer in organic matter, will promote more life in those soils. Also crop rotation, because you will provide different food oh my god, déjame beber agua, sorry. If you have different crops, you will have different food, so you will have different organisms, so you will have more biodiversity, and that's good. Okay, that's some of the recommendation. I know that I explained them in a few words, but all those recommendations are the other webinar. So that's why I didn't explain them a lot, because we will be discussing them in the other part. The purpose of today is that you can identify the challenge if you have some challenge on your farm. So you pay attention, and then in the next webinar, that is this Thursday, we will be discussing the solutions or the recommendation or the action to take.